Hi everyone, it's Christina from Christina's Garden Life. I hope you are having a gorgeous spring. It is a beautiful spring day here. We're right in mid-April and I will show you in a minute, but our tulips and daffodils, magnolias, and all our early bloomers are just in full bloom and it's a really gorgeous day. But today I wanted to take the opportunity to talk to you about pruning hydrangeas. So pruning hydrangeas is one of those things that scare people and definitely frighten gardeners. You will often hear, don't prune at certain times of year. You'll prune off the blooms of your hydrangeas. So just wanted to show you how I prune my hydrangeas, which is honestly very, very little, but a lot of early spring pruning just has coming up. It's a little windy here, so I hope you can hear me okay. So the main hydrangeas I have are actually called bigleaf hydrangeas or hydrangea macrophylla, and those are the types of hydrangeas that you typically do not want to prune because they bloom on old wood. So I'll show you what old wood means. Basically you have the old wood of the plant and then you have the new shoots of growth that will go out of the old wood, and that is from the prior year. So last year when those buds formed, that is where all of the flowers are going to come out this year. So if you took a branch and pruned it all the way back, you would be pruning out all of those flowers and blooms. So most people will say do not prune your big leaf hydrangeas or your hydrangea macrophylla in the spring. However, there is some things that you can do to clean it up, and I want to show you how I take care of that in the spring to foster just a lot of more air and growth in that year. So I'm going to show you that today. There are a second group of hydrangeas. There are panicle hydrangeas and hydrangea arborescens. Those hydrangeas grow new growth every year. So I have a few examples of that as well. But with those, you don't have to worry about it. In the late winter, early spring, you can cut them back to the ground and they will flush out new growth directly from the ground. So today, again, mainly focusing on big leaf hydrangeas because I think these are the ones that get people the most into trouble, and I'm going to show you what to do and what not to do. So my main tip is not to prune your hydrangeas much. So a lot of people buy hydrangeas and they put them in spaces and they don't really look at the tag to see how big hydrangea grows. And that's the biggest problem when people all of a sudden have this massive hydrangea plant and they're thinking, what do I do with this plant? It's way too big. I need to cut it way back. So number one tip for pruning hydrangeas is to look at the tag and plant your hydrangea in a place where it can really foster its full size and growth. You do not want to be pruning these back little or you will sacrifice blooms. So that's the number one tip I have. Another tip I have is to just very selectively prune and make sure that you're pruning once you see the leaves and growth here. That's when you want to prune, making sure to only cut out the dead growth. So you do not want any branch that has leaves and flowers and green coming out of them. You do not want to prune that. You only prune the dead. So that's why I wait until April to really see where all of that growth is. The last thing here is that I do tend to leave my flower buds on in the winter. So I'll show you up close, but it has lots of little brown mound bulbs that don't, or flowers that don't look as good, that are all dried. I like the way it looks in the winter. It has kind of some winter interest in my garden. I like when the snow gracefully falls on it. I'll show a video up here of how pretty I think that looks. But in general, you want to cut those back at this time of year and just take off the little tops so that you don't have dead flowers and you have all these beautiful green stems. So I will show you how I do this today. All you need is a pair of pruners. I have my Felco 2s here, and I'm going to grab a big bucket so I can just put any of the waste in there. I do this every year, so there's very, very little that I will actually be cutting, but I figured I'd show you the process. So let's get at it. Okay, so here we have a hydrangea plant, and this hydrangea came with the house. It's an older hydrangea. It's tucked into our little garden area here, so really small bed, probably a little bit big for the size, but I don't mind it. It gets full of blooms and just a gorgeous look for this area. That is a north-facing wall, so despite that, as you can see, the sun is out right here, so relatively good sun. So as you can see from this plant, we have many, many leaves and sticks that are really just full of new growth. That is exactly what you don't want to be cutting out. So those stems with all of these leaves are shooting out eventually new blooms. So that's where you'll get all of your new blooms. So if you cut this back, then you would be sacrificing all of those blooms, which is why I wait till this time of year. However, you will see some branches like this one, for example. See if I can get it. that just has no leaves on it whatsoever. So if you follow that down, there's nothing there. So this one is relatively dead, and if we clear that out, then it will allow the plant to breathe more. We also have our lovely dead flowers here, but as you can see, this is where your new growth is. There's no new growth coming here, so we can cut it right around here, and this new growth will be fine, and you won't sacrifice any blooms. So I'm going to show you that. So when you have a new flower ball, you just want to make sure that you're not coming anywhere near this new growth. Use your pruners and you can just cut it. So that's a great way to do it. And then this one right here, as I said, has no growth. So for this one, I'm going to follow it all the way down, hoping you can see me following it all the way down. And I think you can you tell how dead that is? Hoping you can tell how dead that is, but I'm going to go all the way to here, and being careful not to cut anything else. I'm going to cut that one growth, and hoping you can tell that that is a very dead stick with no growth on it whatsoever. So the other thing is that that stick came and it has a V. You can see it branches up, and then it has this branch which has lots of growth. So we don't want to cut that one, we just want to cut the one with no growth. There's also another one right here in front of me. So what I'm going to do is just prune out all of the ones with no leaves. You'll see a few down there. One has a leaf, the rest do not. Anyone with no leaf you can prune back. The rest of them you want to keep, and that's it. It's a very easy job, and it'll be nice and quick. So let's get started. That looks much better, all cleaned up. We have all of our sticks that don't have any growth on them, and then this has much more air. There are a few at the very bottom that are very close to the ground that I might end up trimming back just because I don't really like how they drag on the ground when the rest don't. But there is a trick for if you're trying to create a second plant out of your hydrangea. So instead of splitting it, you can take those low branches, and if you cover them in dirt, they will start to develop roots, and then you could take that and plant that as a new hydrangea bush. So that's a way that you can multiply your plant. So I might either trim those ground ones back or might try that technique and see if I can make a little hydrangea baby from my current plant. And before we go to the front yard, I just wanted to show you how beautiful the backyard is looking with all of these tulips in full bloom. So it's just gorgeous back here. I'll walk you around really slow so you can get a shot. And so here in the front yard, we have these Endless Summer Hydrangeas flanking the steps, actually on both sides of the hill. And again, this is the type of plant that grows on old wood and new wood. So just like the bigleaf hydrangea that I pruned in the back, it has new growth. If you cut this back, you will sacrifice blooms. But part of what makes the Endless Summer Hydrangea line endless is that it also grows from all the way down here. You'll see lots of little fresh sticks. So do you see this fresh growth that's coming from the ground? That's a perfect example of new wood. And so this is a great one because this will bloom no matter what. So if you had pruned this back to the ground in the winter, you would get a few of these new growths. So you definitely don't want to cut those either at this point, but this is a new growth that will flower, and those tend to flower later than the old wood growth. So you get a flush of flowers and then a continuous flush as the season goes on. So just like with the big leaf, I'm going to do the same thing, only looking for dead wood. So there will not be much on this plant. This is a much more new plant that I trimmed up last season, but I will show you this as well, and then that's it. And that is it. I hope you enjoyed the video and it was helpful for you. Again, very carefully when you're pruning hydrangeas, especially in the spring, making sure to only prune off that dead old wood at the base when there is no green growth on it whatsoever. You can tell all the way to the tip, no green growth, and that will free up and air up your plants to make sure that they have a lovely blooming cycle. So another thing I hear from people is I don't prune my hydrangeas at all, or I prune them at the right time of year, just like I did in this video, and I am still not getting any blooms. What is wrong with my hydrangeas? So a couple things could be going on there. One, hydrangea literally means water barrel in Greek. So hydrangeas love water. All of my hydrangeas here in the front not only get overhead water, which they don't actually like as much from a sprinkler system, but they also have drip running to each and every one of them to get extra water so that they can do so well. They love water, and you'll see them in the summer months will get droopy if they aren't getting enough water. The second thing is hydrangeas do really well in the sun. Sometimes people think of hydrangeas as a shade plant, but that's not the case. They love morning sun, and as the day goes on, they want to be more in the shade. So this front hill is perfect for hydrangeas. They get a lot of sun in the morning and maybe a little bit in the afternoon over the house, but other than that, they're doing well. And the third thing is you want to make sure you're fertilizing. So you fertilize in the spring and fall and as needed during the year, but making sure that you're keeping them very well fertilized. And you can either use a rose tone, which I use for woody based plants, or you can use a holly tone, which will turn them more blue, or you can use a lime, which will make them more pink. So there are a few fertilizing options for you. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helps you have beautiful lush hydrangeas, and I'm going to show you a few shots of the garden right now in the spring, and thank you so much for the time, and I'll see you in the next video.